Hello. What's up? Oh man, sounds like quite a day. Oh no, you're good, man.
Watching The Idiot. Today we got Jaws Gaming back again to discuss whatever we please. And if I have a weird lispy sound, that's probably because a quarter of my mouth is completely numbed. So,
Woof.
anything that you'd like to start off with?
Um, I hope season one comes uh soon. Something comes soon. I hope anything good happens with Battlefield. But I am. I guess I shouldn't jump to that. Um, I'm happy to be back. Happy to be on the show. Um, yeah, having a good time. I was just on a show with some other creators discussing Battlefield, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more of Ravenfield and Project Wingman, some other things like that.
Yeah,
Looking pretty interesting.
yeah. For some
How are
reason,
you?
Project Wingman is crashing on me. I don't know why. I'll play Ravenfield in the meantime to get some entertainment going.
All right, whatever works.
Yep. So on
Whatever works.
I'd like to actually take a bit of an intentional focus today away from Battlefield 2042 and the modern ones. Obviously, because let's be frank, there's not a lot of good news going on with that. And second off, this is a great time of year for, I think, in my opinion, for people to kind of experience the analog FPS games, the historical ones, so to speak. For the past few
Uh,
days, or in the past few days, I've gone back and played a lot of Battlefield 5, mostly because I can get 60 FPS. And it's been interesting kind of re-immersing yourself in an area without lock-on weapons, without smart warheads and all that such. And I want to discuss with you today what you think would be the ideal historical battlefield. What you want to see, what you think the ones we have did right, and what they can improve on. Basically, more in-depth discussion of that compared to our prior live stream.
yeah, no. As far as like an ideal historical battlefield, see this is always a cool conversation. I think for a video game, for any game really, obviously it depends on what you're going for. But I think for an all encompassing, very skill based type of combat, I would say something like in the early to mid part of the Cold War before technology really took off, but you still had a lot of the early iterations of certain things, as well as some more advanced things like jets and helicopters. But you get your more kind of assault rifles. You get a full array of weapons and things to kind of play around with, to where you're not in these skillless lock-on smart weapons, but you're not in these super archaic, you know, kind of like what Battlefield One had to do, where it kind of had to limit some of its selection just because of the era that it was a part of. Um, so yeah, I would say kind of like the early to mid part of the Cold War. If you go like Korea, Vietnam, kind of base it somewhat on the technology of those eras. You don't have to, of course, follow history exactly if you do a Cold War gone hot type of thing. And then you can mix and match different factions, different levels of technology, different parts of the world. You can really do a lot with it. And that's why I've always been wanting somebody to go into like the Cold War and make a really cool FPS with it, because I think there's so much there that they just avoid for some reason, or they don't go for it for some reason. I honestly don't know why, because I think it could be a total banger.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you on the gameplay potential of the Cold War setting. And what I find I want to talk a bit about sort of the meta aspect. A while back, we all remember how Battlefield tried to have sort of incorporated all into one UI for all the games. I think that kind of system would lend itself well to a Cold War shooter because with the Cold War, you don't necessarily have to focus on like a 3 year span of combat events. You can focus on decades worth, ranging from the Korean War up to the Gulf War and all that. And it provide a wide diversity of combat in a single game because you'll have stuff that's basically World War II adjacent, straight to stuff that's almost indistinguishably modern, and you can have it all in one game. And while the balancing would be kind of difficult, it would. I think it's something worth considering in the future.
Absolutely. Well, I think especially because we see so many games, like especially for like a broader FPS audience in general, we see so many games go for either modern or they go for World War II, and I think it's starting to kind of wear down on people. I don't think futuristic combat is something that really appeals unless you want something like an Apex Legends type of deal, or something along those lines where it's kind of a familiar item for some players, or even like the Star Wars Battlefront games, things like that. I think people enjoy it if it has that kind of grounded in a franchise they already kind of like. So that's why I think Cold War is just this kind of really cool, untouched part of history that's modern enough to where you can kind of get crazy with it. And you'd, of course, have to make it fictional, but no one does it for some reason. I don't know why. I really don't know why.
I mean, the closest we got on market is basically a Black Ops Cold War at the moment.
Right.
And well, it wasn't.
Which
from what I hear, it's mixed reception, and I played a ton now of the beta, and it seems that although it was well done in my opinion for that picture of it, the biggest drawback is it's still limited to basically 6v6 arena gameplay when that era has so much more interesting to offer.
Right, exactly. That's kind of what I was gonna add on to, is like Call of Duty, no matter which era they go to, unless they're going with the more advanced movement kind of stuff, they all play relatively the same. I mean, I think we see that with Vanguard and Modern Warfare, is you kind of see a really similar type of deal going on, despite the eras being drastically different. And I think to really bring out what the Cold War can do, you have to go for either like an indie game. Like I know Rising Storm Vietnam has been pretty popular. You've talked about it with me before. It's been pretty cool, but it seems like it's one of the smaller ones that not quite as many people talk about compared to something like Hell Let Loose or Postscriptum. Or some of those other games out there that are historically set, or even compared to more modern games like World War III. Even though it's in that indie space, for whatever reason, it just doesn't pick up as much steam, even though you'd think it would. I mean, maybe it needs a broader kind of spectrum of things to choose from. I'm not really sure on that front, as I haven't really played it myself, but I would love to see somebody, whether it's AAA or indie, take on a Cold War gone hot kind of thing, because there's so much cool stuff. And I feel like a lot of the technology of that era is around still, like to be able to create the assets for a game. Because, I mean, how long ago did the M16 really go out of use? There's plenty still around that a dev could come in and be able to make it for an asset in a game. It's in a lot of games that are set in the modern day. Plus other technology. I mean, you got the Hueys, you've got, the various helicopters, you've got the various tanks and jets and everything. It lends itself to a modern setting, but it can have that really cool historical spice with an alternate history to it. I just wish somebody would take it on. Somebody that isn't Call of Duty. Call of Duty games all kind of like we started saying, they all end up the same no matter what. But we need somebody to really expand on the Cold War, to really give us something cool, something interesting. I don't know how much sense I made there, but I tried.
No, that's good. I mean, Call of Duty serves a good purpose in popularizing things, but I don't think it has the tool set to really unleash your full potential, so to speak.
Right, exactly.
So I got Raven filled up. For some reason, Project Wingman does not want to play nice today, sadly, because I was going to show off some of the cooler levels, but I think we can do a sort of Cold War gone hot scenario reproduction here.
Yeah, I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm liking what I'm seeing.
I can get this thing. I can get Ravenfield to run with some mods at a nearly playable frame rate on a 6-watt TDP laptop. So a lot of credit to developers for making something that's good for people with cheap PCs.
Yes,
It's
very much.
I really wished it actually got more traction because considering that so many FPS games now, especially large scale Milsim adjacent types, require online play, it's nice to see that there is a tool set out there that lets you kind of emulate it to a certain point without any internet connection. Something we're severely lacking, and even the AI bots in 2042 they're far from an ideal replacement, so to speak.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's honestly kind of crazy because what I've been doing, and it's really nice because it is fairly similar to Battlefield as well as Ravenfield, is play the old Star Wars Battlefront 2, the '05 one, since it's got backwards compatibility on Series X. And I was just having the greatest time just playing random instant action matches, and being able to hop in, and the AI is doing all this teamwork, even though it's like an ancient game by today's comparisons. Just the fact that you can have a really cool single player experience and you kind of drive your own story within it, it's really awesome. And I wish they would have expanded on some of the things in a game like that instead of just kind of forgetting it. It feels like a lot of the really awesome stuff, like the Galactic Conquest campaigns and whatnot, where you can really take a broader scope of commanding a campaign, has really left FPS games or shooter games in general. Obviously, you can do strategy games like Total War and whatnot, but yeah, it just really struck me when I was playing it.
Yeah, so actually, I'll admit, the Battlefront series is probably what got me my big start on large-scale FPS, and I mean specifically the variants on PSP.
Oh, same. That was the one I mainly played when I was a kid because I didn't have a actual full-on console. I just had a PSP. Yeah.
I mean, no, the PSP port. Like now, I'm old enough to understand technology. It's actually amazing how well it ran on the PSP and all the stuff you could do. Especially, what was it, Elite Squadron?
Oh, I loved Elite Squadron. That game was so ahead of its time.
You know, like actual combined arms, like atmosphere to surface, although not perfect. That was basically, in some ways, like you could almost argue that Star Wars Elite Squadron is what I wanted 2042 to be. You know?
Oh, 100%. It's what I wanted the DICE Battlefront games to be. I mean, Elite Squadron was so freaking cool. I remember like destroying one of the capital ships for the first time and like being able to see it actually thing. And then of course you fly back down to the ground and try to finish off the enemy team that way.
Well, I was always lazy. I just used an escape pod.
Oh yeah, that always works too. Oh man.
So actually, I want to bring up. As I mentioned, I was playing Battlefield 5. One of the things I considered that I almost get the sensation that Battlefield 5, if Battlefield 1 basically played like Battlefield 5, I think, well, aside from like a few alterations, I think that would have been like the ideal historical Battlefield. But I'll put it this way. If you had Battlefield 5's cosmetics and the fortification system, along with the greater weapon category diversity, but the atmosphere and geography diversity of Battlefield 1, I think we would have had a real hit on our hands. Something that would persist in, I should say, better than 5 and 1 have, as is.
Yeah, I think so too. There's so many what ifs that can go around it. I mean, I know the devs like wanted to implement their own vision into 2042, but the way they should have just learned from the games that came before it, they could have really made a banger. And even utilizing the things that like you're talking about, like take some of what BF5 was able to do, take some of what BF1 was able to do, all the good things that those games did, and then you can apply it in some capacity to like 2042 setting, I mean, you really could have had a game that appealed to people, especially if you throw on the customizability that Portal has. And then you start really mixing things up. I mean, that could have been a really, really good, really sustainable game. I just, I wish we could have gotten something like that. I mean, could you imagine, like the way that Battlefield 5 did destruction and fortifications and everything on some of these stupidly wide open maps in 2042? Just like change it up, put some more complex structures on the maps that can be destroyed. And, you know, obviously in BF5, they would kind of collapse on themselves as you destroy parts of them. And it really just added this organic feel to the destruction, but it feels so artificial and kind of preset in 2042 that it just feels like such a regression, to be honest. Whereas they could have really built on it, taken a lot of, like we already said, what 5 and 1 did, but then bring on the things that Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4 did well, the sandbox, everything like that. Just, yeah, I mean, I know it sounds like everything we talked about leading up to launch, what we hoped the game would be, but it really genuinely could have, and I think we could argue should have been that, despite what anyone's vision is.
I mean, I guess I'll always make clear I still am paused on things in the game, and I think what they're trying to do with 2042 is continue to find the sweet spot between arcadeism and milsim elements, because as you can see, the changes to the vehicles and stuff like that. I would say it's a lot easier to find that balance when you're not having to optimize and bug fix and everything, right? When you actually have time to work on really refining things instead of catching up to where you should have been in development.
Yes. Yeah, they definitely they're definitely starting from behind the chains, to make a football reference.
I think, I will be honest, I think it has sold well enough so far. I doubt we're going to get a Battlefield 5 early end-of-life service situation where the last updates turn out to be some of the best. I think EA is kind of, because they're going to be setting up the Battlefield universe around 2042's narrative, they basically force themselves into a position where they have to put long-term investment into the game. And here's the thing, right? If they do a good job, people will come back to playing it, or it'll kind of regain accolades. I think a good example was Star Citizen, something like that.
Yeah.
I will just say that, you know, with Spider Palms, I think right now we're in the long wait, so to speak. The long wait of nothingness and unhappiness. Where we got no news, I got no frame rates, you know, in either game right now. And it's just, well, I have hopes, and I have what they don't want. We'll just see how it turns out. So I'd like to, right now I'm getting completely trashed frame rate Ravenfield too, but I'd like to return to two topics we didn't get as much time to discuss: naval combat and air combat. Two sort of, in my opinion, forgotten pillars of the franchise I'd like to discuss here. And look, I may not have the configuration set up right now, but I got a special treat for y'all to show later on in this game. So, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, because I remember that was towards the tail end of the last one we did. Starting off with the aerial combat, because I've really been thinking about this a lot, because I do have a lot of qualms with the way it's been really in the last 3 games. BF1 had pretty solid, like, plane-to-plane combat. It just didn't happen enough, and I think there's definitely a decent argument that they could do more with what goes on in the air. I think, number one, a lot of the really powerful aerial vehicles right now, the Nightbird and the attack helicopter, even honestly, you could say the landing craft, the transport ship, I mean, they're a little too powerful. You know, I don't understand the cannon on the transport ship. I don't think it should have a grenade launcher. I think the miniguns are fine. Honestly, if you take off the grenade launcher, you can probably buff them. But at the end of the day, that's its own conversation. What it really needs to happen, aside from maybe adding some level of difficulty to utilizing them, is to give them something to do. Make aerial superiority something of a thing in a match. Make having dominance in the air mean something. I don't have too many really refined ideas as to how they could do that at the moment.
It could be like
Because
maybe-
obviously,
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, obviously, just having aerial dominance in general, I mean, is a huge advantage. If you have a couple of really good pilots, you can really kind of decimate the infantry. But I feel like there needs to be something to do other than just decimate the infantry. There needs to be something else to focus on in the air, whether it's like maybe transport planes will fly in for a certain team and try to drop in supply crates. Well, if you're in the air, you can try and take one of those things out and prevent them from being able to actually drop supplies to their infantry. Just little things like that that makes having good pilots be more than just, oh, well, they're just farming the other team.
Oh, so like
That's
something
what's going to win.
I guess what you're describing kind of sounds like an expansion of the gunship for armored kill, right? Because that thing,
Yeah,
once you
something
had
like
it,
that.
was a gunship, mobile spawn points, and I think on some maps even an additional IFV slot.
Yeah, right. Like, just make it to where, you know, your team support craft can be more of like a team support craft. It can transport people, but it can also maybe drop supplies. But if you're in something of an interceptor, like a jet or something like that, or a scout heli, and you can take that out, that's a huge buff to your team in being able to control the map and control the game.
Yeah, I remember in Battlefield 1, the heavy bomber actually had supply drop options of loadout. The problem was, it's an offensive tool, and why would you take that when you can go to the loadout and basically turn it into an enemy keeper?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because I think I remember that being a thing, but no one I think has ever actually used it. Maybe to test it out.
I got a dirty secret to admit. I'm not saying I was a heavy abuser of the Ilya Moromets, but I definitely enjoyed the strategic bomb package in a few matches, more than I probably should have. But that's how
I mean,
the game is
understandably.
designed. At the end of the day, like the player, I think the biggest obstacle something like that is that it might not have enough, I guess, points or reward for players to actively do it, and that's a challenge all on its own. Obviously we've got the gallant knights of 2042 who actually do pick the transports over the Nightbird, bless them, even though I'm not one of them, and will actually fly around capping points and literally winning matches that way. I don't know how that happened. Oh, that's curious. But yeah, I think honestly, aerial combat, they've influenced some systems that are different on 24-2, but it doesn't have the same gravitas that ground combat does, and I think that's a shame because it's excessively important, and there have been examples in the past they could build upon,
Mm-hmm. Well, I think another thing, and it goes back to when I was playing Battlefront 2 the other night because I did some space battles, is like some kind of aerial objectives that add that gravitas. Like there's something about just enjoying hopping in a plane or hopping in a starfighter with a pilot class and just trying to take out the enemy capital ship, and you have various objectives you can destroy. And I think that sort of feeling like you're influencing the match without having to get a bunch of kills, like maybe, and this is really ambitious, I don't even know if it would be possible with current technology, like maybe you bring back some sort of commander mode, like the OG commander mode. You had things on the map that you could destroy, but it was mainly like infantry would destroy it. But imagine there's like a commander mode where there's actual items on the ground that are helping both teams if you control a certain objective. But if you have a certain aerial vehicle or something like that, then you can go in and you can actually destroy that or disable it or do something that takes the commander offline to try and prevent the other team from being able to do certain things. If that makes sense. Kind of add some of that.
I was actually going to kind of recommend, a capture point, something like that too. So I guess I want to move on to, I don't know, helicopters are always going to be a contentious issue no matter what. And
Oh, of course.
And planes, I guess now that we kind of discussed general air mechanics, it'd be difficult to consider what to do with the actual things. Because in Battlefield 1 and 5, especially 5, you saw the issue with having what could be considered an overemphasis on ground attack and not enough emphasis on fighters. But in 2042, we kind of got an opposite situation where the air combat, so much of it is focused exclusively on the air that you basically have nothing in the way of unique ground attack options, and the one option you do have might actually be overpowered and get nerfed eventually. And if you don't get rocket pods or something like that, you're kind of beyond back at square one.
Yes. No, I definitely agree there that there's just some very strange balancing because it feels like everything is overpowered, but in not a very good way.
It feels overpowered when you're the one getting blown up, but when you're doing the blowing up, it feels like excessively underpowered, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you hop in a helicopter, you immediately get hacked by RAW, and then someone just blows you up. But at the same time, when you're on the ground, you just get completely wrecked by some dude in a scout heli that just happened to fly over once or twice. Uh, it's just very odd balancing that I think needs a lot of looking into. um, I think a combination of that is because I think they thought if they made the helis really accessible and really powerful, but people figured out that they could just hack them and that would really disable them and kind of weaken them, that would be a decent balancing act. But I think it just makes it for like it's honestly miserable for both sides because no one wants to run like Nav and Rao unless you're just really annoyed at a helicopter pilot, and someone is always going to be really annoyed at a helicopter pilot. But at the same time, I mean, the helis can cover so much ground so quickly that even when they do get hacked, they can almost just escape. So it's a really odd balance. It almost makes me wonder about this specific type of techno warfare. I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but it makes me wonder, like, is adding that extra layer, is it feasible for a game like this? Like, can you really balance it that well, or is it just too many layers on top of each other for this particular style of shooter?
I'd personally say that, honestly, considering like when you factor in both game statistics balancing and the fact that half of the player base is going to be smart enough to find unique ways to abuse this, and the other half is too stupid to not know how to use it properly, I don't think it's feasible. But at the same time, I also believe it's worth a try to see if it is feasible. Right? This is really the first time. This maybe Battlefield 4, but Battlefield 4 and 2042 are kind of the first real forays where DICE investigates, so to speak, the feasibility of implementing network warfare in contemporary military. So, but I mean, air vehicles, no matter what, are just kind of a mess to balance, even without, because you're talking about something that has high speed, high range, high maneuverability, and the most powerful weapons on the field, right? Balancing that's going to suck no matter what. It doesn't matter, for any game.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, it's almost like you could say, oh, well, just make it a glass cannon. And it's like, well, it's a little bit more difficult to balance than that. I mean, it's not as simple as...
the attack helicopter in Battlefield 4 is a glass cannon, and you can have a lot of fun in that thing for about 5 seconds.
Yes. But if you get two guys in there that are really good at what they're doing, I mean, it is very hard to stop at the same time. So it's... I don't know. I mean, I feel like a good way that it was balanced in BF4 was just how difficult it was to really get in those things and be really effective with them. As opposed to this game, it's so easy to be effective with them on top of the power that they have, that the balance that that kind of glass cannon balance isn't really as balanced as it was before. Like, you almost have to think about it like there's 3 phases of its balance. It's very fast, it's very maneuverable, and very powerful. It has low health, but it's also difficult to use. And 2 of the 3 kind of bring that power down to where it is balanced, whereas now you have a ton of power, a ton of speed, and a ton of accessibility, but it's still really easy to take out. It's just... it's so easy. Like, you hop in and you're basically guaranteed 10 kills. Whereas in BF4, I mean, I've tried to put tons of hours into helicopters, and I've maybe got 4 kills in helicopters in that game. Like, I mean, I probably have more than that, but you know, it's a lot less accessible. It takes a lot more practice, um, and I think that just in a way added its own way to balance them that I think is just missing now. But I mean, I could be totally wrong. I'm not a
Yeah.
dev.
I mean, this is definitely knowing how to balance games is difficult enough without stuff that's excessively difficult to balance. I guess to discussing naval warfare and its purposes and implementation. Now that we're kind of on that, obviously a lot of people are disappointed that 2042 didn't really have any naval warfare, despite things like the lore and the setting really contributing to it, and the fact that we haven't really seen naval warfare since Battlefield 1's underplayed DLCs.
Yeah, it's the thing is, I really enjoy naval warfare, and honestly, I would love to see a little bit more of an in-depth look at it from a modern sense. I think Battlefield 1 did a pretty awesome job with it. Battlefield 5 was kind of non-existent,
Yeah,
to be honest.
Dude, Battlefield 2042 almost has more naval combat than Battlefield 5.
Yeah, honestly, like it's I don't, Battlefield 5 was like, hey, you got some landing craft. That's naval, right? They'll put a little boat out in the distance. Hey, look, a battleship. Woo! But like, Battlefield 1 was the last one that really did it right with the naval. I mean, you had the ships that were specifically, designed for ship-on-ship combat. Some were designed, of course, for hitting the land targets. But you also had the little torpedo boats to try and go after the dreadnoughts. You, of course, had destroyers. You had torpedo planes, which I think is a massive missed opportunity with BF5. And I think if they had really expanded on the Pacific and the game got the support that it needed, we could have had like a cool, almost World War II style version of carrier assault. But be able to throw in like a lot more vehicles, being able to try and take out the carriers for the other team. I think that would have been really awesome. But I was really looking forward to seeing a more modern iteration of naval combat, just to see what they would do with it, because we really, even in BF4, you don't see this larger scale version of naval combat. You see river combat, like we've talked about before, but you don't see any kind of like guided missile destroyers. You don't see any guided missile cruisers, aircraft carriers, nothing like that. I think there's something there that can be explored that I think would fit pretty well in Battlefield, but they just haven't gone for it, which is funny considering that there is a ship as the menu screen.
I'd say part of the difficulty with that, I think part of the reluctance, at least for the modern era, might be in that guided missiles, in real life are kind of, well, if you talk about game balance issues, that's kind of one huge one right there. So I can understand how there would be issues where the gameplay loop is sitting in a destroyer and you're just locking on, and then having countermeasures and locking on again, and then you get like 2 hit even though you are just deployed countermeasures and stuff like that. So I can understand why there might be issues with a non-ideal game loop, but at the same time they can kind of compensate for that by maybe having the destroyers be the largest vessel there is, and then filling in the rest corvettes and riverboats. Basically, it doesn't need to. People just basically want to use ships on something approximating open ocean. You don't necessarily need to go full World War II style, grand scale. Even something that's kind of limited would be enough.
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. I can definitely see how a guided missile cruiser just launching smart rockets from the ship onto land would probably be pretty damn annoying. But you could also, and I think this is sort of kind of like carrier assault, but Battlefront 2 also had its little, what was it called? The Dice Battlefront 2, not the original one. It's basically, it was conquest on the ground, and then the winner went and tried to invade the other team's ship, and it was like rush in there. I feel like you could maybe do something like that, but then it's almost like, oh, just put rush on a ship. So
That was carrier assault, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. But that, I mean, that could be cool. You could have like different ships you could try and go through. I don't know. Maybe you have to try and like take them out one at a time or something like that. Like you plant an explosive on one, get on your boats, get on your lifeboats, something like that, and you have to go through each ship and try to take them out. And like you got to keep up spawn beacons or whatnot. Otherwise, you got to start back on the beach. Like maybe you could do something like that. But then again, suspending your disbelief for that one, or the amount of distance you'd have to cover, because nobody's parking a cruiser next to the beach. So
That stuff.
there's a.
No, yeah, I agree. You know, one other element that I think would have been interesting to see expanded on in Battlefield was airborne operations, things like paratroopers, and although paratroopers are kind of obsolete now, mass helicopter deployments and stuff like that. I mean, the core gameplay loop kind of includes it a little bit, but it was only Battlefield 5 that even tried to really emphasize things, and that didn't go too far anyway.
Yeah, they didn't really do enough with it. I feel like that could have been really cool. They just, it was just so oddly underwhelming to play like the airborne mode in BF5, which sucked because it should have been like this really epic thing to do. But I feel like they just didn't put enough into it. I think it was also because it was attached to Grand Operations. I think if you had it as like a standalone mode, I honestly would have played it quite a bit because it really almost played like Rush, if you think about it.
I think it as a replacement for Obliteration, actually.
Yeah, I mean, so one of those like kind of linear plant the bombs and move on to the next one type of things. But it could have been really cool. I think they really missed an opportunity not making it a standalone mode. I think if they'd kept that 32-player playlist where it was like Rush, Frontlines, and then they throw Airborne in there, I would play the crap out of that playlist.
Yeah.
But
as I said, there's a lot of areas Battlefield has really explored that we really... It'd be nice to see them do. If hopefully the live service model will eventually give them the breathing room, they can try it out. Or incorporate into the core game.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
I mean, I have to admit, right now it's kind of disappointing when the only AAA game that has the potential to do that doesn't really seem to be paying it any attention. All the others are basically arena shooters, right? You want to get this fix, you got to go for either the free-to-plays that have really contrived gameplay loop, or for this, which is reliant on user-generated content.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. Because I think, yeah, that's that is true. That is very true. I don't know. One thing to consider, just going off of this sort of topic, do you think that Battlefield games should try to just like pick maybe a certain mode to base the game around, and then try to... Like, it's hard to say because obviously 2042 tried this with Hazard Zone and it just does not work on the current maps. But take, for instance, how Battlefield 1 took operations, and that was really the basis for a lot of the maps, and they had pretty good flow because of this. Like, take that, and then those are really the strong points of the game, and just recognize that as the game. And sure, you can still have some of the classic modes like Conquest and whatnot, but it's like, well, this is really what the game is built around. It's designed the best for this. Of course, saying that it's still Battlefield.
I mean,
do you think they should try that, or would that not work?
I just want to preface this. They're going to do whatever looks like it's going to be more popular, right? But I think there's trade-offs with that. On one hand, you get a lot more refined of a game. You know, key case in point, Bad Company turned Battlefield 1. But you might also, it might come at the cost of map design itself. Case in point, Battlefield 1, especially with DLCs, Galicia, you know, that was towards that kind of experience, and it definitely wasn't the best. I think overall, what's really going to determine like the quality of maps isn't really the philosophy as much as it is how much time they have to work on it in development and how much playtesting they do beforehand. Because 2042 had a lack of playtesting, and we kind of saw the results of that. And no matter what, at launch, the vanilla maps are always going to be the worst because they're based on how the devs think people play the game, not how people actually do so. But that's exacerbated by a lack of playtesting, right?
Right. Right. Oh
So
yeah, of course.
I would say that personally, I'd rather they try to. Well, I don't know, because on one hand, Battlefield 4 kind of tried to make all the maps fit for everything. That made them suffer too. So they should probably have what maps they intend. Well, they can't really do that because if you have maps that aren't available for all modes, then it just gets people pissed off, justifiably. So I think at the end they should just try to make maps as available as possible, but work more on refining them first. Now, and I say that like it's easy to do. Obviously, it's not. But I don't like
Right.
the idea of having certain maps completely segment off from certain game modes. That's part of one of the big limitations in Battlefield 5's community games, for example. But at the same time, you can't deny the polish that exists when you design it for one mode, right?
Right.
It's a hard,
Yeah. No.
it's a hard one.
Absolutely. Very difficult. Yeah. I do not envy the job of some of those guys.
One
Does
thing, yeah, that's no. I lost my train of thought. I was going to ask. Okay, so yeah, I was thinking a while back on live service elements they can incorporate. Now, I'm always big on. I hold the opinion that with Battlefield, it'd be more useful to try to take inspiration from the social systems of MMOs as opposed to the social systems of COD. And one of the things they should try to do with live service, as part of the corporate narrative, is run things like a live campaign. So to remember, I think in the early Battlefront 2 life cycle, how they had like the light versus dark thing, and in other multiplayer games you have campaign game mode servers. I wonder if DICE should try something like that, especially now with 2042 making both factions intentionally ambiguous, where it could provide another lure and gameplay motivation. What are your thoughts on something like that?
Well, I was excited for Battlefield 5 to try to do something like that. It's just I don't know, DICE just had such a utter kind of set of missteps on both Battlefront 2 and BF5 that I don't think we really ever saw the full potential of that idea, because that idea definitely excites me. I really like the idea of going through World War II theater by theater. And I think being able to have like these cool player driven kind of things going on, like almost like a competition. I think it might have been Battlefront 2 that was like if you played a certain amount of one side, or if one side got more kills than the other, then you got a certain skin for that hero or for that team, or I can't clearly remember, but it was something along those lines. It was like, just for example, it was like Princess Leia versus Darth Vader. Whoever got more kills in a certain time frame, they got a cool skin for it. I think it's definitely a cool idea, and I think being able to expand on something like that, because I think that kind of player-driven storytelling is very, very important to these kinds of games. I think it could be really awesome. They gotta get a game that releases stable enough that they don't start from behind the chains to begin with, and then they can't really take full advantage of it.
Yeah,
But otherwise, it'd be awesome.
when it was really funny because before 2042 launch, I had the expectation that as long if the game was feature complete, things would be all right. And then it turns out the 2042 launch is feature complete, but it's almost buggier than 5's launch. So it's kind of yeah, it's I don't know 5. I don't know what's going on with DICE when it comes to really bad launches consistently. That because obviously we're seeing that it really limits the potential of the live service. Hopefully with just delaying things on live service with 2042, that allows it to have full integrity. But with 5, since it kind of hit the ground running, it wasn't the best. Oh, I'm sorry if I lost my train. One other thing, what's your opinion of a social hub in 2042, kind of like what Destiny and Call of Duty World War II had?
I definitely think because of the way the community kind of comes around Battlefield, I think it almost needs something that is very social. It just, I mean, think about the last two games. We've really asked for something within the community for things like squads and whatnot and platoons and everything to come together and be able to do events, things like that. And I think Battlefield, for whatever reason, is the one FP game that is super behind on that. Now, do we need a social hub where it's just simply to show off skins and whatnot? I don't think so. But a place like I don't know, an area where you can have little squad comp matches and stuff. I think that could be pretty cool. Like maybe just have a test range that is where you can get a good amount of people on there. Something like that, where you can just kind of meet up with your friends and up to about the size of a typical platoon. I think would be very good for Battlefield. Why they haven't done that type of thing yet, I have no idea. Because I think it really needs it, and they've just never even seemingly attempted to do that. I thought 2042 was going to have that with the ship, the Exodus. Instead, it's just a little background picture.
What if, yeah, honestly, like Battlefield 2042 on the 128 player servers I don't play because of how unoptimized the game is, it's basically the same amount of people as you find in typical large scale MMO PvP matches, right? It's probably the same
Right.
server infrastructure, so why doesn't DICE just kind of accept that it's never going to be an arena shooter and just go all in on the MMO methodology for these things?
Right. And I think that there's another thing with that a lot of Battlefield players want to sink their teeth in for not just hundreds, but thousands of hours into Battlefield. And the fact that the gameplay has kind of eroded down to being so accessible that there's almost no point in spending thousands of hours on the game because you get the complete experience within about 100 hours, as well as just many other factors that go into the lack of content, things like that. I really wish they would embrace this idea of a grind. I hear people talk about it all the time, and it's not just the Twitch streamers and the YouTubers. A lot of players want to play for that amount of time. They want to have rewards for playing for that amount of time. So, doing an MMO style deal where it is grindy and there's a lot to do and you have a lot of people out there, I think would really fit Battlefield. And we talked about it last time, and I kind of talk about this in the video that I'm finally doing. It's been like a month almost. Yeah. Battlefield could really benefit from these RPG aspects of being able to put yourself and write your own story on the battlefield. It's very much a game. The sandbox is so important because the story you write with your friends is so personal to everyone that plays the game, whether it is by yourself or whether it's with randos or whether it is with friends. You kind of write your own story on the game in the same way that you write your own story in a game like Skyrim, or write your own story in another RPG of that type, where you're putting yourself as the vessel through which you experience the world. And that's what the sandbox enhanced. So not only are you putting yourself into these faceless soldiers, these faceless classes that people wonder why Battlefield players identify with them so much, well, it's because it's themselves. You're also, you're getting your own unique experience out there. And of course, that's going to be very personal to them. That's far more personal than any character you can give us. Where there is a space for those kinds of games, those arena hero shooters. There is a space for that, but I just don't think it fits Battlefield. And that's kind of right. I do think there is room for story in Battlefield. I do think that there is definitely room for that. Just it's got to be player driven, and I think that all kind of comes together with what we've been talking about.
I would say, as an example, DICE is kind of ignoring player personal narrative to their own detriment. Because, take for example, like in my high school years, I played crap ton of Heroes and Generals, right? This is a really terrible game, honestly. But I played it because the game system were constructed in a way just barely enough that you could kind of self-insert quite well. So, even if it wasn't the best experience, at least it was undeniably your experience. And honestly, even in the days of playing Battlefield on PC that I've had Heyday, the parts I enjoyed so much were the sort of community servers and all that. at the end of the day, it became more than just playing Battlefields. Playing and it was creating a personal experience and having your personal experience alongside everyone else's. You know.
Yep. I totally relate to that. I mean, I didn't play Heroes and Generals, but there's something to be said for making something your own. And people, even outside of Battlefield, they're always going to identify with their own thing more than anyone else's. It's just humans are selfish by nature. I mean, think about the thing that gets humans' attention the most is their own name. You know, I think that says a lot about about people and how much their own personal experience matters. I mean, you know, everyone thinks they're the main character of their own movie, right? I mean, we're telling you to take advantage of that in these games. And again, there's definitely room for these hero shooters, definitely what's popular right now. But that doesn't mean that you can't trailblaze and make something even better, more popular.
Like, honestly, Battlefield 5, I think, kind of did this well because of how much customization you got. You know, you can make any outfit you want, but you could also choose your skin color, you know, your sex, and well, and the elites too. You know, they could have implemented these specialist cosmetics as like default elite skins, but then kept the specializations as is and gave us the same customization depth that Battlefield 5 offered. Because, I mean, obviously, cosmetics aren't core gameplay, and they sound trite on paper, but the actual mechanics of it in game, it is really intimate and gives you the experience of, you know, self-insert a lot better than even the generic identifiable skins you had in prior games. So it's not as if DICE doesn't have the capacity, they don't understand the value. It's just that for some reason this time they kind of ignored it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree there. I think that I agree with what you said on Battlefield 5. I think the customization was really good because you can really put your own spin onto things. And the odd part about the way 2042 did it is they decided to attach the gadgets to it. They could have literally just given us classes, and they could have given us guys like Irish, like you can give us an Irish skin to use. Even just let us use Irish's face and then build a skin around that. You know, I think that could be really easily doable without compromising the core of the game and the design of it. I'm sure you can hear my cat. But for whatever reason, they just didn't go for it. And I think there was a lot there. And I think there's a lot of cool customization. We've seen the concept art. We see the AI soldiers, which look freaking awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, they look freaking awesome. But we can't use them. We can't equip them. And I don't want them to be their own specialist. I want them to just be like a playable class. I want to be able to just have classes back and then just put the specialists within those classes and just essentially make them skins. That's a pipe dream, and I don't think DICE will actually do that because they got to make their money, which I think they can still make anyway. Just selling skins that people like. Got to make a good game first, though.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I kind of wonder is, like, how is that, like, Heroes basically caught on in the FPS market? Because, I guess Overwatch is probably a big deal and a big part of why. But it seems odd to me because, honestly, like, so many FPS games are about personal fantasy, wish fulfillment. So the fact that a lot of people seem to be okay just kind of giving that up to pre-made characters seems odd. You know, you'd think the COD community would freak out over it. I mean, they know how to do that. So I never got didn't do it over this.
But the thing is, in Call of Duty, at least as far as I'm aware, with the operators that they have, there's no like you might have a takedown tied to their operators, but other than that, like the gameplay isn't really influenced by them, by the individual operator you have. And even then, they separated their operators into factions, or they did in Modern Warfare. Vanguard is basically all friendly fire, kind of like 2042. Yeah, literally. I don't know. I hate that trend. I'm like, give me factions. You know what I would love to have seen from 2042? Separate the specialists, separate the Russian AI, separate the US AI. make the US and Russian AI their own faction, and you can play them within the classes. And then take the specials, keep the classes, but make it to where the specials are kind of this wacky faction that they have their own kind of cosmetics and everything because they're kind of a mishmash group, but they have a unique look that's distinguishable because they're so kind of, no pats. But that way you have factions, you have a little bit more structure and kind of bring back a lot of essential stuff to the design of the game, and you're not killing everyone that looks exactly like you. You can tell which side you're on, you can tell maybe what you're fighting for, things like that. I think there's something there too. I think there's something to look at.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I guess part of the reason why I've been playing Battlefield 5 aside from 60 FPS is because it does allow me to have some of the self-insert back, 24/2, no matter. Yeah, I don't know. I'm fine with the idea of specialists as a gameplay mechanic, but I don't really like how that they've taken away your ability to really define your customization with them. I think that was bad. They could have gone with the elite class system of that, or the elite character system of Battlefield 5, where you can have like these special characters available as just a character you can swap between.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. Could not agree more. There's so many ways they could have done it that's better than what we currently have. I mean, I don't know that it ever will change. I don't know what they'll do about it. Clearly, what they have now is not popular, so I would imagine something is going to change. Now, does that mean they're going to put them into classes? Does that mean that they're going to change anything? It doesn't, but I mean, BF5 and BF1 have more players than 2042 right now, so they might want to do something. This clearly is not appealing to the casual crowd as much as it is not appealing to the hardcore crowd. So
the other thing is that I'm kind of dismayed by is how de-emphasized Portal seems.
Which is weird, because it's like the best part of the game.
It is undeniably the best part of 24/2. And I don't even know why they haven't even banned things like, or they haven't like even just coded in that you can't name your server something like XP farm or whatever, since that was the concern.
Yeah, and right now, because they just haven't focused on it, I know they're still working on trying to get the XP stuff to work, which, I mean, I know they're worried about, oh yeah, if we do full XP, they'll just do zombie servers and farm that way. I mean, you can turn off the AI from gaining XP, and I think, if someone goes in and they put everyone on low health, like super low health, like I'm not even talking like hardcore servers, I'm just saying like,
in general,
then I think you can turn or limit XP in that server, but I don't know how they can't make a system that recognizes some of those layouts that seem like XP farms.
Can you even
from going
servers?
in there? I think you can report servers.
I think at the end of the day, considering all this, like, it's communication, I think, is the issue. DICE doesn't really communicate things like these requests. They don't communicate ideas on how to properly play their game. They're not communicating what's even in the next pipeline update, stuff like that. Look, I know, like, I was, like, on Reddit for the entire Battlefield 5 lifetime. I understand how awful it was to be a community manager or to just be listening on it. But the problem, at the end of the day, you need to have at least someone out there. Even if they go in knowing they're going to be getting a paycheck just to be a beatbag, you still need to have something out there. Because it's better to, I'll put it this way, it's better to let people have a target than to just let them stew and come up with their own ideas, right?
Yes.
And well, I know right now, they obviously, if you ask them, like, hey, where's the roadmap, they're going to say something non-committal, but they're saying something, people don't like silence. They don't like having, unoptimized, broken, unbalanced games, but what they really don't like is having silence on how you're going to fix that broken, buggy, unoptimized game. And at the end of the day, look, there's probably people at the DICE HR office who were there for Battlefield 5 and had to deal with it. They probably know how to put up with internet logs. Why just like throw them $50 more a week and have them cast completely on the social media channels? It's I don't know.
Yeah, something.
look, I think communication is what the game really needs, and I can understand why they don't want to, but you need to have at least something, right? Because look, I'm on low sodium 24.2 all the time, and it's like my main 24.2 server, and even people there say like there needs to be more communication. Why isn't there, right? I don't know. At the end of the day, I guess I want the game to succeed, and I want it to be good enough that it appeals to enough. You know what I mean? No Battlefield game's ever going to be perfect for me since they're not doing remastered Battlefield 3, but I want to have fun, and I want to have everyone else have fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think that's the minimum thing that I want. I just want to have a good time. When I log into the game, I don't want to turn it off after like 1 or 2 matches. You know, I don't want that to be the main feeling I come away from. And somehow they've made just the most unfun possible experience. It's really hard to put a finger on any one thing, but it's a combination of lack of testing in terms of a lot of design decisions, the just obscene accessibility. I mean, the skill gap in this game is non-existent outside of your basic FPS skills. And even then, they try to nerf you a lot. That's why, you know, things like armor and whatnot are in the game. There's so many things that the game needs to improve. There's so many things that it needs to change. That, I mean, I think EA is going to commit to this because I think this is their kind of baby they went all in on. You can't really go back on it at this point, barring canceling support and just starting over again. And I think they feel like they've come too far to do that. I do think that they will try to stick with it and see how it goes, but they have so freaking far to go. I love the moon map.
Yeah, there's someone actually made a moon map in Rising Storm 2 as well. It was funny to play on. Just the concept of seeing a bunch of dudes in rice hats with Moes and Agons running across the surface of the moon. You get close to a fire base, you can hear like a radio chatter. It's the funniest thing.
That's hilarious.
Dude,
does the gravity change?
I don't think it's modified. And I think there was also a Minecraft map in Rising Storm 2 that uses CS:GO style gameplay. That was hilarious as well.
Yeah, it sounds pretty funny.
Hold on, I think I got the hold on, I'm going to restart the match because I want to show off the Battlefield couch, or they call it the Assault couch, but it's basically that. If there's one game I really hope to see in the future, it's another Hardline, because I feel kind of cheated. I never had the opportunity to really play it before it died out, and it seems like it could have been really fun as like a sort of punk Battlefield game, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think I get what you mean. I didn't really play much of Hardline. I never played Hardline, but you know, since I have Game Pass, I should probably download it just to see what it's all about.
I played the campaign like last summer just because I was bored and had nothing to do during the isolation. I mean, the campaign wasn't great, but it was kind of enjoyable for what it was. And I liked the gunplay too. I mean, it was definitely fast-paced, but I did wonder why that game died. Because honestly, I played like a 1 round, and to me, it should have been a winner, right? Okay,
yeah.
There's like 5 dudes on this couch. Why is it flipping over so easy?
Whee!
There we go. Okay, let's go try to run over some anime girls.
Get them!
You know, the thing is, they patched out the American Dream couch from Hardline as well, so I don't even understand why they did that. I don't know.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, like they patched out Hardline's early on in Hardline's life cycle, and it's like, why?
Why?
Okay, that was... Yeah, I guess that didn't work out well, but that's the American dream, is to attempt something like that. So what was probably your best match in Battlefield? What's like your most memorable Battlefield 1 moments? Or what do you want to bring up from that?
I mean, it's hard to really pick any one moment. I would say there's kind of times of hype, I guess you could say. And I don't mean obviously, reveal trailer and everything's cool, but I think it was experiencing certain things for the first time.
I totally
I mean,
agree.
Battlefield 1's introductory cutscene and the opening of it is just, I mean, it really hits you hard. That is the best tone setter for an FPS game that there's ever been, I think. Um,
Totally agree.
and then beyond that, it's just experiencing some of the new modes. I mean, Operations was incredible. The first time you play it, it's like, holy shit, this is exactly what I wanted from this game. And it's so cool because Operations is really like the last time outside of Battle Royale that it seems like a AAA FPS title has actually tried to innovate in its own unique way, like within itself. Um, because you take Rush, you take Conquest, and you just put them together, and then you slap this badass World War One atmosphere over the top of it. I mean, literally, what more can you ask for?
You know, yeah. Now Battlefield
It
1
was
was it was nice because I was like Battlefield 1 was kind of the last Battlefield game where nothing really went wrong. If that makes any sense.
yeah, no, it definitely makes sense.
And the cool part is, anytime now that was my high school days, and I was always hyped whenever new DLC came out. Because let me tell you, like one of my most vivid memories of Battlefield have always been in the DLCs and how unique they were. And like playing what was it, the Verdun operation, like going up to the broken down church and watching the map just slide on fire, like going from a nice peaceful sunny French day to something full of ash, it was wicked insane to see. It was really cool. And then with, what was it, the Russian DLC, charging across the open plains and getting slaughtered by poor map design, that was something, to experience. Battlefield 1 really did a great job of kind of exposing you to a bunch of cool things, cool atmospheres that you don't really see in any other FPS games, right? The closest they even really tried was kind of like the World War II. The problem with that was it was always just, Western allies, beach landing or airborne. It was never anything unique beyond those three. Where Battlefield 1 kind of got a little bit of everything, including the Russian Civil War, which I was really surprised to see.
Oh, I was super surprised by that. I mean, because it was almost like a fresh part of history that they kind of set it up to play like a World War II game, which a lot of people said, but I mean, it is true overall. But it was just a fresh new frontier. I mean, I'd always, thought about World War One and stuff before BF1, but BF1 really got me interested. It felt like a whole new chapter of history to dig my teeth into that was just really fucking awesome. And I feel like with World War II, so many people have kind of dug their teeth into it so much that it's lost a lot of the luster that you get with a fresh setting like a World War One.
Yeah, I mean, with World War II, you either stick to the things that have already been done, or you risk basically going into like a super dark stuff that is like a mess to deal with on its own. Because I was reading like this thread one time where people were discussing, an Eastern Front, the concepts for an Eastern Front World War II game, and one person talked about how like if there was a German campaign, it should kind of expose you to war crimes to try to drive that point home. Then someone else raised the issue that if they had that, there'd probably be neo-Nazis who buy the game just so they get to commit war crimes, which is its own can of worms. World War One was also a really terrible conflict for civilians, right? But World War II is just like that, turbocharged, and in some ways, in order to avoid the real mess, you kind of have to stick with these rote, already done and tried concepts that are stale. I guess that's just a fundamental limitation of the future of a historical war game of any type, is that where do you properly draw the line between entertainment and just flat out ignoring some like the worst stuff ever, At least with stuff in the modern or near future era, you can avoid that, right?
Well, for now, you can avoid it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there are things we will learn about. I mean, even Modern Warfare, though, if you go back to that, Modern Warfare 2019 at least, the Highway of Death thing was like a big deal because I remember doing the campaign review on my video, and some Russian dude like commented on it, like just so mad that I didn't talk about how they had taken something the Americans did. I think it was the invasion of Iraq, and basically just flipped around and said the Russians did it. And I just didn't even know about it. And
Well,
he was just so mad in the comments about it. I'm like, oh shit.
well, at
But
risk of sounding like a neocon, like for what we actually, those weren't civilians. They were basically retreating but non-surrendered Iraqi military. So it's not like we were lighting little girls on fire. Even though, let's be honest, in wartime, the United States doesn't always do a good job of checking out its targets.
yeah, no, I mean, and that's part of the thing in war. I mean, I'm not saying you can just excuse war crimes and stuff like that, or, obviously things are a bit hazy when it comes to conflict. Because unless you're there, you don't really know the whole story. Of course, we have an idea, but there's always certain things on a human level that you can't quite understand. I wasn't there. I don't really know much about the highway of death and how everything worked out. Um, but still, I mean, and I told the guy this too on the comments. I'm like, well, let's not pretend the Russians haven't committed any war crimes either. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be real here. Neither of us are squeaky clean, bud. So
Look,
I think it's one of those things I can suspend my disbelief over to an extent. Like it's not totally out of the realm of possibility that the Russians would have done something like that. Sure, the name is what the Americans did, and I'm not saying that we're innocent in that, but you can suspend your disbelief no matter who you put as the person doing that, because it's very believable either side could have done that sort of thing.
Like, avoiding targeting civilians in war is like a new thing, to be honest. It's not something that's done for old history, right? So,
oh yeah,
I mean,
very new.
Just look at what happens to people in the Game of Thrones television death. That's really what it was like up until 1900, basically, and even beyond that. So.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, just check your 23andMe and how far your DNA has moved. You think that was all done without war?
Yeah. So no, that's there's always going to be a show how to really balance out that. But okay, I guess move on. So, what about Battlefield 5? Is there anything in that game that really stood out to you as like a positive memory, a positive moment?
There were parts of it, but it always felt like such a weird game from the very beginning. It was, and it was different with Battlefield 5 because that was the first game that I went into starting to do content creation. So my attitude towards it was also different in that way. So, I mean, I was kind of thrown off by the way they decided to interpret World War II. I thought the idea of checking out some of the secret parts of the war, not secret really, but the kind of unknown stories of the war could have led to some cool things, but they didn't really follow through on a lot of that. Which sucked, but I mean, we still got some interesting stuff out of it. I really enjoy the Pacific. I would say that's a highlight for me. The first time you get in one of the landing craft and storm Iwo Jima is probably my big highlight of that game. That was so much fun. Granted, that lasted about 2 weeks before they completely just annihilated the time to kill and the gunplay and everything, and it's really never fully recovered. But it has its good moments, and I do get some tweets that get some traction, and I've even said stuff about BF5 in videos that got some angry comments. Just saying, like, there's aspects of BF5 that are likable, but as a whole, it is really not a good game. And a lot of people, your common player isn't totally going to understand. Like, everyone says BF5 has the best gunplay in the series, and based on the way they describe it, sure, initially the initial idea of it, but the fact that you de-link your crosshair from screen center is just weird. Like, that just is such a terrible change. screen center is where you shoot. That's like the most basic rule of an FPS game.
I don't even think that's
And
based on.
it goes further.
I think Battlefield 5's gunplay kind of took things too far and then no consequences for holding down the trigger, right? Because that just made it stale. Like we talk about 2042, but one thing I'll give DICE credit on for 2042's gunplay is that it gives enough spread where you have to you're encouraged to do things, but it's not so much spread that it's punishing. So I'll give them credits on that because Battlefield 1 is a case of way too much spread. 5 is one where it's definitely far from enough spread. Yeah, I mean, people I think are kind of part of the reason people like Battlefield 5's gunplay so much was because it wasn't Battlefield 1's gunplay.
Yes, totally agree. Totally agree with that. And the problem was the solutions that they had to come up with only damaged the general gunplay in a far more negative way than adding spread ever would have. You know, like they had to basically do the time to kill changes because, you know, if you add spread to the game, well, people are going to complain about that. If you, you know, change up the way certain, I don't, the only way they could do it is the way they did it with the time to kill changes in order to rebalance the game. I don't think they were necessary, but I do think that, like you said, adding some kind of a punishment for not just having continuous fire all the time is something that should have been in the game. And spread is a very simple solution to that. But spread to recoil conversion, as they call it, is such an over convoluted, crappy solution that makes no sense. And I don't know. It was just such a weird thought process they seem to go through and trying to balance that game and fix something that wasn't really broken in the first place. Well, the guns were a bit lasery, but I mean, like, people weren't complaining to the point to where they wanted those severe time to kill changes, because obviously those were more to reduce the churn on the game. But I would not have minded the spread added once they added the snap aim assist to the game.
You know, the thing with the churn too is that the churn wasn't from bad gunplay or even bad vehicle balance. It was because for such a long period of time there was no content that was getting added. It was underwhelming, and you had both an undeserved and a deserved negative news cycle on top of it. So, like, gunplay trying to fix that is not what go. It's not it ain't it, Chief.
Yeah.
But to Five's credit, they playing 5, I kind of realized that it would have been the perfect game to have made use of cross-play in Portal, because at the end of the day, it probably does give the most customization of a historical shooter out there. And I think having some of the functionality that, say, Portal or cross-play brings would have been a great thing to see. That, unfortunately, we don't really get to see now, because, well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have minded to see community games get a lot of the settings that Portal has. I think people would have really done a lot with that. Because as I would say 5 is bad for a Battlefield game. For a general AAA FPS, it is a solid game. I would much rather play Battlefield 5 than Modern Warfare 2019. I cannot stand Modern Warfare 2019's multiplayer. But it suffers so much from things like attrition that I think if you give us these customizable servers could have been solved. And I think you could have some really awesome communities form because of that. That just is never going to happen now because they don't have the ability to do those kinds of things.
I mean, even have, why can't they have implemented server backfilling bots in 5? Because that game definitely needed it. A lot of regions were just flat out dead, and at least would have given some people who did play some way of doing it, right?
Right.
So there's something, because Battlefront 2, you had bots offline up to 6 to 3 bots. Why couldn't they have done the same with Battlefield 5? So it's, I guess we're seeing cycles. Hopefully, I get the opinion. I think what we're seeing right now is DICE, let's be honest, I think Battlefield is starting to transition to becoming more like COD in terms of franchise. So maybe we're just seeing sort of a typical trough or valley of franchise development. I hope we are. But
I hope so.
all right, I want to keep things positive though, at least for this. What's like a really defended Battlefield 3 memory you have?
Battlefield 3, honestly, my biggest moment for it was the first day I played it. I remember I had watched Black Hawk Down with my dad, and I had really, of course, Black Hawk Down's a freaking awesome movie. And I was playing Battlefield 3, and just going through the campaign. Number one, I love BF3's campaign, even though it's probably not the greatest in terms of FPS. I still love the campaign, and I had a pretty good time just going in and experiencing it for the first time. But there's this one mission where you're like assaulting at night, and you go over this wall, or like the wall blows up and you run downhill.
Oh,
it was such a freaking awesome mission.
Battlefield
and
3, yeah. I'm sorry, go
I was gonna say that the Thunder Run with the tank, that mission was also awesome, and then the kind of shockingly violent ending to it. Battlefield 3 had a lot of very gritty stuff that it honestly surprised me back then. Like, oh, they're putting this in a video game now, like it. But it didn't feel like they were doing it just for the sake of doing it. Like, it felt like it served a purpose to the game, and it was just, to me, it was really well done. Granted, it's been a while since I've actually played through the campaign in its entirety. So, I mean, I was probably, what was it, 2011? So I was like 13, 14 at the time. So in the mind of my 13-year-old self, it was freaking awesome. I don't know how well it'd hold up today, but BF3 is always going to hold a spot for me. In FPS and, of course, the franchise, I still think it's the best game that we've gotten.
You know, Battlefield 3, I realized the reason it really succeeded was because it gave you the atmosphere and sensations of succeeding in a milsim, but it did it with relatively arcadey gameplay, right? So you get all the fun and enjoyment you get out of succeeding in a milsim with nowhere near the investment necessary.
Right. It was accessible immersion.
That's a great way of putting it.
Which is great. And while I don't think, like, there's people always screaming for, like, official hardcore support and everything like that in the games, even up to this day. And that's not Battlefield. Like, if you want an actual milsim with the immersive mechanics and everything, that's what Insurgency's for.
Yeah, you got Squad.
You got better. Squad. You got Hell Let Loose. I mean, you've got a lot of those kinds of games that fit that particular genre. Battlefield's gameplay is always supposed to be pretty accessible. I do think it should require some form of a skill curve, but it shouldn't be to the point of a milsim to where, unless you're on comms with like an actual platoon, it's just a miserable time. Like, I mean, I've tried games like Hell Let Loose. I've tried games like Insurgency, and they can be fun for a few matches, but they don't stick the way that I enjoy Battlefield. Which is partly why I haven't uploaded in a few weeks, because I don't know what to play.
You know, I've been getting back into Verdun a little bit, and it's a pretty fun. It's almost like, I would say it's kind of like the Battlefield 3 of World War I shooters.
Yeah, I do remember playing a little bit of Verdun. I didn't play enough of it because there just aren't enough players on console.
Oh, yeah.
I may have to re-download it and check it out, but I remember it being really fun just crossing no man's land and trying to survive.
Dude, it's all, man, it's I play with bots. Well, I don't really play with bots, but a lot of times on PC, you only have 20 people in the server. And that game is definitely a vibe, because it has some of the magic sauce Battlefield 3 had, but at the same time, it doesn't have enough of magic sauce, in my opinion, to really draw me in full time. And I guess I think that's kind of a big thing of why I'm still in the Battlefield, is that not all the games have the same magic sauce or the potential to make magic sauce that Battlefield has.
Right. There's not like another game with that magic stuff. I think it was Level Cap today. I was like, Nothing else has that magic sauce that DICE puts on Battlefield.
Yeah,
There's something missing. Because Call of Duty's tried to copy what Battlefield does, and they can't even do that successfully. You'd
well,
think of anyone, Call of Duty would be able to do it. There's something to Battlefield that you really have to have a well thought out product to scratch that itch.
and obviously, it's proving not to be an easy bar to clear.
Right. Right, of course. I mean, just like breaking down some of the old games and looking at what makes them up, some of the great ones in the series, the level of thought that went into so much of the design is insanely detailed. Like, you could definitely tell that the care that went into each and every design decision was immense. And I don't know that on a AAA scale these days, you're going to be able to find that level of care just because of the way that these kind of corporatized games work these days. And I mean, I don't think it's that the devs don't care. I think it's just management wants to squeeze the most out of it without having to put as much into it as they can. Hence
Well,
why we don't have a campaign
to be
this time
fair to
around.
management, that is kind of their job, but it gets to the point
Right.
where they might not be listening to marketing enough.
Right. And I mean, I understand you want to limit costs and everything. That's just good business. You don't want to be operating at a loss, but at what expense does the product lose out to? Like, where do you draw the line? Because some of those older games were just, like I said, they're so well put together in terms of their design. Like, you could excuse the bugs Battlefield 4 had because its design was just insanely good. You could really dig your teeth into it and genuinely put thousands of hours into it just because of how deep the game was, how deep the experience was. And the same goes for Battlefield 3. Battlefield 1, I think, is a bit of a shallower experience just because they try to casualize it a bit, but you can still put plenty of time into that game and have a good time. Obviously, people are still making content on it to this day, so there's something to be said for that. Because despite its design flaws, it still has a lot of really cool ideas, a lot of really cool things and concepts that just are not there this past couple of titles.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I guess things are probably coming to a close, but I want to end on another positive note. So, despite all the issues, what's one positive thing you'd like to say about Battlefield 2042?
about Battlefield as a whole or Battlefield 2042?
2042. I know it's going to be a bit of a challenging one, but I think it's a worthwhile exercise.
I think one positive thing I want to say is it's a very ambitious set of ideas, and I respect the idea to kind of take an ambitious approach. I really hope they start to get the execution right, and I hope they have the time to nail that execution. Because I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I think there is something here. It's not a completely lost cause. There's something. So that's my positive vibes on 2042 as of right now. Season 1, I don't think is going to save it, but I think it can get us going on the right track, and they can at least get us going in the right direction. We could see something maybe towards the end of the year that's a pretty solid game and a pretty solid experience in a consistent manner.
Yep. Okay, and I guess that's one positive thing I'd like to say about 2042 is that I like its interpretation of the near future way more than what COD did. Ironically, with Battlefield 5 being kind of ungrounded, 2042 for its setting is a lot more grounded.
Yeah, it's definitely not the wacky direction they could have taken it. I like that it is relatively a lot more grounded for a game that is set in the near future. It's not a cyberpunk type of thing quite yet.
No, I can already see the pieces of them eventually turning into that, but at least for now, it's a really, I'll say it, it's a really nice vision of near future combat that clearly had a lot of thought, time, and care put into it. especially since a lot of it was just the coding for the microtransaction system.
Yes. 100% correct there.
Yeah, I mean,
100%
I guess
correct.
at the end of the day, I guess I'm kind of waiting to see where Battlefield goes, and I'm maybe waiting for the Division to start getting more content as well. But we're in a gaming drought, but droughts end, and I think at the end of the day, let's say I'm positive. I have hope, right? Of course, you can't like from the Dark Knight Rises. There is no real suffering without hope, but some suffering is good.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, folks, you got to watch me get completely destroyed as I was conversing with Jaws here, but it's always nice to have you on my live streams discussing some of the best video games ever made, and what we hoped will be the next set of great video games.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. It's a pleasure being here. It's a pleasure being here. I do enjoy coming on the show, talking some gaming, just having a good time.
Believe me, it's really hard to get intelligent conversations about gaming nowadays.
Oh, I know.
Hey, we're not using Twitter though, so that makes it quite a bit easier.
Well, you're not using Twitter.
Hey, I use it more than I should. The only reason
I definitely use it more than I should
was just so I could check out on video game news, because I had heard all these developers say stuff, and then I go on like 2/3 of their posts are just them posting the pizza they bought the night before.
That is that's so funny. That's like exactly one of the devs that I'm closest with. He's not at DICE anymore, but he's with another company. He's a game dev, and he literally just posts pizza memes and shit posts all the time instead of gaming news. So that's the most spot on analysis I've ever heard.
Yeah. No, man. I'll be honest, it is super hard to get good, like, quality gaming news, especially now. Because YouTube, there's nothing. YouTube goes by what Twitter has. Twitter has trash, and then on occasion you get something quality in Reddit, but usually Reddit's just butthurt whining, at best.
Yes. Reddit likes to complain.
Sometimes justified, sometimes unjustified, but you would be hard-pressed to find the dividing line.
Right. Yes. Abso-freaking-lutely. It is a pretty ragey area to go into. I don't really venture into Reddit all that much, to be quite honest. But from what I've seen, it's a very interesting place.
Dude, honestly, I kind of wonder if Reddit and some almost feels like 4chan without as much of the overt nastiness.
Yeah.
It's 4chan once through several layers, and you lose the worst. We also lose... I don't know, man. Let's just say I'm not a big fan of the current state of social media in general, and it's only harder when you want to try to find good gaming news.
Yes.
Oh, yes. On sort of related note, there is a YouTuber who does Insurgency Sandstorm content, who on occasion does stuff for 2042. He's a great guy to check out. I forgot what his name was, though. Six Snipes. I think that's his name. Six Snipes.
I might check him out.
Yeah, he's...
Might as well, right?
Doesn't hurt. I mean, Insurgency's got a presence on console now, so hope it's not going to die as a franchise, thankfully.
Right.
Of course, I don't get why they made PS4 and Xbox One 30 FPS.
That
gave them good graphics.
I would rather have the frames.
I mean,
especially when you've got, PC's going to have over 100 FPS.
Wait, so it's crossplay?
Like, you have no chance. Yeah, as far as I'm aware.
Oh, God, that sounds awful.
Yeah, that's why it's so tough.
I mean, 30 FPS, is bad enough. I'm playing at 30 FPS right now. It's definitely a chore, right? But 30 FPS, when you're playing against dudes who have 120 FPS 4K rigs, they probably got NVIDIA filters to help spot people. Ugh.
Yeah.
Well, more power to people who can manage it. I know it's fun, but man, you want to talk about labor of love? I'd rather play like Battlefield 2042 on 15 FPS than try that out.
Yeah, that's it's so damn sweaty too. Some of these games. That's the one thing. That's the one thing that really gets me is the sweats. I just want to enjoy it. I just want to have fun. I just want to chill.
Yeah, you think, you don't like the sweats in PvP, so you try co-op, but then it turns out co-op is just basically suicide bombers and bots that aim by you the moment you turn the corner.
Exactly.
Dude, someone
It's
posted
like,
like
how do
a
I do
video
it?
on the Insurgency subreddit where with a flashlight, and it was like showing how the bot actually knew where you were before you turned the corner. They were already aiming at you like 10 feet from the door.
Oh, that's evil. That is evil.
Yeah, dude, I've played co-op with friends on this, and we've had so many like bullshit deaths. We just walk out, we see a bot, we don't even have time to react, we just headbang, and it's
Brutal. I can imagine.
it's like
I've played like 1 or 2 matches of co-op, and it can be pretty tough. I try to do it on comms.
you know, I would
man.
say that I actually prefer to play for co-op Day of Infamy and like Insurgency 2014, just because I feel like it's not as brutal. I mean, it can still get decently brutal, but you don't get suicide bombers and aim bots, at least. I can't.
At least not as many.
Yeah, not as many. You know, and I can't actually endorse enough people to get Day of Infamy because it is a really good. I mean, same devs, obviously, the game before this, and it looks. It's a game that looks like it's from 2014, even though it came out in 2017. And I mean, it's a fun game, but you know, I've been spending so much time playing games that are 10 years old or like 7 years old now. I want to play something new, and I hope 2042 is that new thing once it hits the ground properly after the next few bounces.
I hope so, man. I hope so. It has a chance. A smaller, ever shrinking chance, but a chance nonetheless.
Look, I guarantee, like, literally, like, so much goodwill if they just get it well optimized. I mean, if you can act, part of, like, the reason why systems can appear to be so bad is if you literally don't have the frames to send all the information over, right? It's...
Right.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's, as I said, gotta end on a happy note. It's always great to have you on here. And, it's nice to have a Battlefield YouTuber who actually, put some thought into their content, right?
I try not to make the low effort. I mean, I'm not trying to roast anyone in particular, but I try not to make the super low effort type of content.
Man, when you go for the 10
spit
minutes,
out nonsense. Yeah,
no,
10 minutes. It's 8 minutes now.
Oh, efficient.
You can try even less.
Yeah, man, I want something to drown out the noise.
Yeah, just get some something dry going here, Hey. But yeah, no, it's been a pleasure being on. Thank you for having me. Got to end on a positive note. I had a good time. There's some. I think there's some hope to be had for FPS. I know it's pretty grim right now, but to me, that breeds the ability for something new to come out. It was seeming pretty dry, and then Warzone kind of took over. I know not everyone's a big BR person. I'm not a big BR person, but it breeds innovation. Somebody's going to come out on top. Hopefully, it's a game that I enjoy this time around. And
there's always
not some sweaty nonsense. There is always that, which I did actually see on Game Pass.
Yeah.
So I may download that.
You should definitely give it a try. I mean, look, I've never played Ace Combat or even any flight game until Wingman, so I went in kind of like a virgin, and this thing, it's worth every cent, man. And I bought it at full price, and I don't do that.
Yeah. I look forward to trying it. It's installing with Hardline right now. So I'm just waiting on it.
You're in for a wild ride. Buckle up.
I'm excited.
All right.
I'm excited to give it a run.
Again, Great
But
to have you on here, and good night. And for everyone else, listen to the sky, okay? He at least cares. This is
yeah,
something you don't find.
Dice, I know you're listening. Listen to me. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate being here. I appreciate coming on. It is great to have good conversations with people. Um, we may not know what we're talking about all the time, but we try to understand what we're talking about, and that's what's most important to me. Even if we're not maybe 100% correct, it's a good time. It's enjoyable. It's a lot better than the people that are like, don't like it, don't play it. It's like, how can you understand it if you don't play it? Type of deal, But I have hope. I have hope for FPS. I have hope for Battlefield.
You know what they say,
I'm
right?
ready to see some changes. What is that?
It's always darkest before it's pitch black.
That is true.
But
That is true.
luckily this is video games, and we always have the opportunity to touch grass.
That is also true. That is very true. There's always a bigger fish. There's always a newer fish. There's always a better fish, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Again, it's
So
great to have you on here. I apologize for not being able to shoot up as many Fox girls this time. Obviously, with it's a bit taxing on the
Maybe-
CPU.
yeah, next time we'll shoot up some more Fox girls.
Yeah.
Call it a day.
So again, good night. Thanks for showing up.
Of course. Have a good one, man.